Look, I'm going to be honest with you. When you sign up to haul cargo across the galaxy, nobody mentions the paperwork, or the customs checkpoints, or the fact that you'll spend more time getting scanned by alien bureaucrats than actually flying your ship. My name is Marcus Webb, and for 2 years I'd been running the most boring freight route in the Galactic Trade Consortium, Earth to Proxima Station, Proxima Station to the Vega colonies, Vega back to Earth, rinse, repeat, die of boredom somewhere around year 30 when you realize you've spent your entire life shipping protein paste and industrial lubricant. This particular Thursday, if we're still calling them that, I was docked at Orbital Station Kepler 7. Picture the DMV but in space and run entirely by aliens who think forms are a sacred art. I was going through my millionth genetic scan, which is basically the galaxy's way of making sure you're not smuggling illegal DNA or carrying space plague or whatever. The scanner operator was Vesh, a 4-armed beetle alien who took his job with the kind of seriousness usually reserved for hostage negotiations. He had this bureaucratic clicking thing he did with his mandibles whenever he was concentrating. Click, click, click. It was the soundtrack to my slow descent into madness. Arms in the scanner, human, Vesh droned, all 4 of his hands typing on different terminals simultaneously. Show off. It's Marcus. We do this every week, Vesh. Protocol requires species designation until scan confirms identity. Right. Because I might be a different human. One of the other 6 billion who definitely has access to my ship and cargo manifest. Click, click, click. Your sarcasm has been noted in your file. Of course it had. I stepped into the scanner, a glowing blue ring that hummed with the kind of energy that probably wasn't great for long-term reproductive health. Not that I was using that particular system for anything exciting these days. The scan usually took 10 seconds. This time, at second 7, the scanner started making a noise like a cat being strangled by a synthesizer. Then came the sparks. Vesh? Remain still, human. More frantic typing. The clicking intensified. Vesh, I really think we should... The alarm started. Not the little beep-beep ones. The full station-wide everyone panic now alarms. Red lights flooded the customs bay. The scanner ring spun wildly around me, and I swear I could smell something burning. Then, just as suddenly as it started, everything stopped. The ring froze. The alarms cut out. In the sudden silence, I could hear Vesh's breathing, which sounded like wind through a tunnel. On every screen in the customs bay, the same message displayed in glowing green text. Template species, origin, Terra. Okay, I said, stepping carefully out of the scanner. So that's new. Vesh was staring at the screens. All 4 arms had stopped typing. His antennae were doing this twitchy thing I'd never seen before. That is not possible, he whispered. Yeah, I'm getting that vibe. Look, obviously it's a malfunction. Just reset the thing and we'll... Do not move. Vesh's voice cracked into a register I didn't know beetle aliens had. He slammed a button on his console, and a containment field shimmered to life around me. Are you serious right now? Commander Ryloth will be here immediately. You will wait. You will not move. You will not breathe on anything. Vesh, buddy, I kinda need to breathe on everything. That's how breathing works. But Vesh wasn't listening anymore. He was making a call, all 4 hands shaking as he typed. And I was standing in a glowing force field, watching my boring Thursday turn into something significantly more complicated. Commander Ryloth arrived in under 3 minutes, which would have been impressive if he wasn't such a pompous jellyfish about it. Literally, he was a jellyfish. Well, technically, he was a Kinidarian from the Antares system, but he looked like someone had given a jellyfish delusions of grandeur and a hover tank. His tank glided into the customs bay with this irritating whoosh sound, and his translucent body pulsed with bioluminescent patterns that I'd learned meant he was either excited or constipated. With Ryloth, it was hard to tell. Explain, he burbled at Vesh. His voice came through a speaker on his tank, and it always sounded like he was gargling marbles. The scanner, Commander. It displayed a classification I have never encountered in 16 years of service. Vesh gestured at the screens with 3 of his 4 arms. The 4th was still shaking. Ryloth's body pulsed bright orange as he read the display. Template species, origin Terra. His tentacles curled inward. This is impossible. Our database has no such classification. Yeah, I said from inside my containment field. Almost like it's a glitch. They both ignored me. Cool. Love being treated like a science experiment. Could the scanner be malfunctioning? Ryloth asked. I performed maintenance 2 days ago. All systems were optimal. Then perform a full diagnostic now. While Vesh scrambled to run tests, Ryloth floated closer to my containment field. His massive eyes, each the size of a dinner plate, studied me with the kind of intensity usually reserved for bomb disposal. Human Marcus Webb. Do you feel any different? Any unusual sensations? Urges? I mean, I have the urge to leave and get back to my ship, if that counts. This is not a joking matter. Commander, I haul protein paste for a living. Everything is a joking matter, or I'd have thrown myself out an airlock 2 years ago. Ryloth's body flashed red, definitely annoyed. The scanner has identified you as a template species. Do you understand what that means? I'm going to go with no. It means, said a new voice, small and squeaky, that you might be one of the first ones. A tiny alien scurried into the bay. Picture a mouse that someone had stretched to about 4 feet tall and given a lab coat. This was Pip, one of the station's xenobiologists, and honestly the only alien on Kepler 7 who'd ever been nice to me. Pip, you can't be in here. Vesh started, but Pip waved a tiny paw dismissively. Oh, please, Vesh, this is the most exciting thing that's happened on this station since the vending machine started dispensing the wrong flavor of nutrition cubes. Pip's whiskers twitched as she approached my containment field. Template species. Oh my goodness. Pip, I said slowly. What's a template species? Well, theoretically, they don't exist. It's a classification from the old databases before the Galactic Consortium was even formed. The idea is that somewhere in the galaxy there was an original species, the first one, and all other intelligent life somehow evolved from them or was seeded by them or, well, the theories vary wildly. So like space Adam and Eve? More like space bacteria that got really ambitious over a few billion years. Ryloth pulsed bright blue. This is absurd. Humans are a recent addition to the galactic community. They have been cataloged for only 43 years. They cannot possibly be a template species. Then explain the reading, Pip said, her nose twitching with excitement. Malfunction, obviously. Then let me run a full biological scan. If it's a malfunction, my equipment will show normal human readings. If it's not, well. Pip's eyes went wide. Then we've just made the most significant discovery in galactic history. I raised my hand, still trapped in the containment field. Quick question. Do I get a say in this? No, all 3 of them said simultaneously. Great. Love that for me. Ryloth's tank bobbed thoughtfully. Very well. Full quarantine protocols. Move him to observation room 7, and someone alert the council. If this reading is accurate, if there's even a possibility it's accurate, they will want to know immediately. As a security team arrived to escort my containment field down the corridor, I could hear other aliens gathering in the bay. Word was spreading fast. I caught snippets of conversation as I was herded away. Template species here? That's impossible. Humans are barely civilized. I heard they still eat solid food. Like barbarians. Do you think he's holy? That last one came from a small crowd of what looked like sentient flowers. They were bowing. At me. At Marcus Webb, who once got fired from a coffee shop for falling asleep during a rush. This was going to be a long day. Observation room 7 turned out to be way nicer than my apartment back on Earth. Like, significantly nicer. We're talking a space suite with mood lighting, a bed that adjusted to my body temperature, and a bathroom with 17 controls I didn't understand. The shower had settings for species I'd never heard of. So this is quarantine? I asked the security guard, a hulking rhinoceros-looking alien who'd escorted my containment field to the room before switching it off. Secure observation, human. Right, but like, is it quarantine or house arrest? You are not under arrest. So I can leave? No. That sounds like arrest. The guard's massive horn twitched. You are a potential template species. The protocols are unclear. No one has ever been a template species before. Command decided comfortable containment was appropriate until we understand what you are. I'm a cargo hauler who's having the weirdest Thursday of his life. That's what I am. The guard left without responding, which seemed to be a theme today. I was starting to think aliens didn't appreciate my conversational style. For the first hour, I just sat on the impossibly comfortable bed and tried to process things. Template species. Origin Terra. The scanner had literally said Earth was the origin point of... what? All intelligent life. That was insane. Humans had only been in space for like a century. We were the cosmic equivalent of toddlers who'd just learned to open the safety gate. Then the visitors started arriving. First came the religious group. 7 different alien species, all wearing robes that looked deeply uncomfortable, pressing their various appendages against the transparent wall of my observation room. Blessed ancestor, one of them intoned, a being that looked like a floating brain in a crystalline shell. We have awaited your return for generations. I think you've got the wrong guy. I'm not anyone's ancestor. I'm 28. The template walks among us, another one whispered, this one covered in feathers. The prophecy is fulfilled. There's a prophecy? About me, specifically, about the return of the first ones. Again, really think you've got the wrong guy. I failed my high school biology exam. Twice. They started chanting. It was deeply uncomfortable. Security eventually moved them along, but they were immediately replaced by a group of scientists who stared at me like I was a particularly interesting lab rat. Pip was among them, looking apologetic. Sorry, Marcus. Word got out on the station network. Everyone wants to see you. See me do what exactly? I'm just sitting here. Existing. You're potentially existing as proof of the template species theory. That's huge. It's really not. It's a broken scanner. But Pip looked uncertain, and that worried me more than anything else. Pip was the rational one. The crowd outside my room grew larger. I could see aliens pressing against the corridor windows, taking photos, arguing with each other. This was spiraling fast. Then she arrived. Cora was a lizard alien, about 6 feet tall, with iridescent scales and eyes that calculated profit margins before you finished your sentence. She wore what I can only describe as a very expensive suit, if suits had tails built into them. She strode past security like she owned the station, slapped a palm against my observation window and smiled with way too many teeth. Marcus Webb. I represent Xenogenetic Solutions Incorporated. We need to talk. Do we? You're sitting on the most valuable genetic code in the galaxy and you don't even know it. Let me guess. Station Command hasn't offered you anything? No compensation for your time? No legal representation? I mean, they gave me this nice room. That's not a room, sweetie. That's a holding cell with mood lighting. Cora pulled out a datapad that materialized from somewhere in her suit. Here's what I'm offering. Exclusive licensing rights to your template genetics for commercial use. Medical applications, genetic research, cosmetic enhancements. We're talking about a compensation package that would make you wealthier than some planetary governments. I stared at her. You want to patent my DNA? I want to make us both obscenely rich. There's a difference. That's deeply unethical. Ethics are for people who can't afford lawyers. I can afford very good lawyers. Before I could respond, Pip squeezed through the crowd. Cora, you can't just commodify a template species. Watch me. The Council will never allow it. The Council moves slower than a glacian slug migration. By the time they've scheduled their first committee meeting, I'll have 40 contracts signed and a marketing campaign launched. I looked between them. Cora, grinning like a predator. Pip, looking horrified. And somewhere in my cargo hauler brain, a thought formed. A terrible, wonderful thought. If everyone thought I was special, actually special, maybe I could use that. Maybe this disaster of a Thursday could turn into something profitable. Cora, I said slowly, tell me more about this compensation package. Pip's whiskers drooped in disappointment, but Cora's grin widened. Now we're talking business. Turns out when you're potentially the galaxy's genetic grandfather, people take you seriously. Who knew? 3 hours after Cora made her pitch, I was aboard a diplomatic shuttle heading for the Galactic Council chambers on Station Prime. The Council had sent a formal summons. Not a request. A summons. With escorts. Very polite escorts with very large weapons. Cora had somehow managed to attach herself as my legal representation, which the Council hadn't been happy about, but couldn't technically refuse. She'd spent the entire shuttle ride briefing me on Council politics, which boiled down to everyone hating everyone else but pretending to cooperate for the sake of galactic stability. The key, Cora said, adjusting her suit, is to stay calm, don't volunteer information, and let me handle the negotiations. Negotiations? I thought this was just them asking questions. Marcus, sweetie, everything is a negotiation. They want information, you want to not be dissected, see? Negotiation. That's a horrifying way to frame this. Welcome to galactic politics. The council chambers were exactly as pretentious as I'd imagined. Massive, with a domed ceiling that displayed a real-time map of the galaxy, all sparkly and rotating. The council members sat in elevated seats arranged in a circle, looking down on the center platform where Cora and I stood. There were 12 of them, representing the major species of the consortium. I recognized a few. High Chancellor Vorn, a towering insectoid with a voice like grinding gears. Counselor Threx, who looked like an octopus had merged with a business suit, and floating in her hover tank, Matriarch Selene, the Snidarian representative and apparently Ryloth's boss. Human Marcus Webb, High Chancellor Vorn boomed. You stand before the Galactic Council under extraordinary circumstances. Yeah, my Thursday has been pretty weird. Cora elbowed me. Let me do the talking. The Council recognizes Cora of Xenogenetic Solutions as legal representation. Vorn continued, sounding annoyed about it. However, we direct our questions to the human. Cora stepped back, whispering, short answers, don't speculate. Marcus Webb, Counselor Threx burbled, tentacles gesturing dramatically. The genetic scanner at Station Kepler 7 has identified you as a template species with origin Terra. Do you understand the implications of this designation? Not really, no. I haul cargo. This is way outside my job description. The implications, Matriarch Selene intoned, her voice echoing from her tank's speakers, are profound. If accurate, this reading suggests humanity is not a recently evolved species, but rather a descendant of the primordial species that seeded life across the galaxy. Okay, but that's insane. Humans have been in space for like 100 years. We barely have our act together on one planet, let alone multiple planets. And yet the scanner readings persist, said another counselor, a reptilian being whose name I hadn't caught. Multiple stations have now confirmed the anomaly. Wait. Multiple stations? How many people have you been scanning? All available human subjects in consortium space, Vorn said simply. 63 individuals thus far. All show the same classification. I felt my stomach drop. You've been secretly scanning random humans? It was necessary to verify the data. It's also super illegal, Cora added cheerfully. We'll be filing a class action lawsuit by end of business today. The council members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Good. Let them squirm. A door at the side of the chamber opened and Pip scurried in, carrying a datapad that looked comically large in her tiny paws. She climbed up to a small platform, whiskers twitching nervously. Esteemed counselors, I've completed my analysis of Marcus Webb's genetic structure. Proceed, Vorn commanded. Pip tapped her datapad, and a holographic display materialized above the center platform. It showed a complex double helix structure, rotating slowly, with sections highlighted in different colors. Human DNA contains genetic markers that match ancient fragments we've discovered across 17 different worlds. These fragments have been dated to approximately 4 billion years old, predating most known intelligent species by, well, billions of years. The chamber erupted in murmurs. Council members leaned forward in their seats. However, Pip continued, her voice getting steadier as she fell into lecture mode, Humans are not the template species itself. Rather, they appear to be direct descendants of a species that engaged in widespread genetic seeding during the early formation of the galaxy. So I'm not Space God, I'm Space God's great-great-great add a few billion greats grandson, I asked. Essentially, yes. The template species designation is a misnomer. The scanner malfunctioned, but not in the way we thought. It detected a partial match to what we believe was the original seeding species and defaulted to the closest classification in its database, which happened to be template species. Who was this seeding species? Matriarch Selene asked. Pip's whiskers drooped. We don't know. They vanished from the galactic record approximately 3 billion years ago. Every spacefaring civilization has myths about them. The architects, the progenitors, the first gardeners. But until now, we thought they were just myths. So let me get this straight, I said slowly. Humans are related to ancient space gardeners who planted life everywhere and then just what, retired? More likely went extinct, Pip said apologetically. But yes, essentially. The council chamber fell silent. You could hear the hum of the holographic projectors. Then Councillor Threx spoke. If humans carry the genetic legacy of the architects, this changes everything. Trade agreements, political status, cultural protections. It changes nothing, High Chancellor Vorn said firmly. Humans remain a junior species in the consortium. A junior species descended from the galaxy's founders, Cora interjected smoothly. That's an interesting legal position to defend. And just like that, the council devolved into arguing. Some wanted humanity elevated to senior status immediately. Others insisted genetic heritage meant nothing compared to actual civilization development. The religious factions wanted humans declared sacred. The corporate interests wanted to know if they could patent human-derived genetic treatments. I stood in the center of it all, watching 12 different species shout at each other about my DNA, and thought about how this morning I'd just been worried about making my cargo delivery on time. Pip slipped down from her platform and approached me quietly. Marcus, there's something else. Something I didn't mention to the council yet. Why do I feel like I'm not going to enjoy this? Because you're smart, Pip said. We need to talk. Privately. Pip managed to get me excused from the council session, which had devolved into a shouting match between the religious faction and the corporate interests about whether my DNA belonged to God or to the highest bidder. Cora was in her element, threatening lawsuits and negotiating percentages, so I slipped out with Pip while everyone was distracted. She led me to a small laboratory tucked away in the lower levels of Station Prime. It was cramped and cluttered with equipment I didn't recognize, but it felt more honest than the council chambers. Real science, not political theater. Okay, I said, sitting on a stool that squeaked ominously. What didn't you want to tell them? Pip pulled up a holographic display, her tiny paws dancing across the controls. The scanner at Kepler 7, it didn't actually malfunction. What, but you said... I said it defaulted to the closest classification. That's true. But Marcus, the scanner worked exactly as designed. It detected something in your DNA that triggered the template species flag, something very specific. The hologram shifted, showing a complex genetic sequence with sections pulsing in red. This is a marker we found in your genome. It's not natural, it's artificial. Engineered. I stared at the display. Are you telling me someone edited human DNA? Not someone. The architects. This marker appears in all human DNA we've tested. It's old, Marcus. Billions of years old. It's been passed down through every generation since humans were humans. What does it do? Pip's whiskers twitched nervously. We're not entirely sure, but based on the structure, we think it's a key, or a signal. Something that identifies the bearer as having architect heritage. A key to what? That's the question everyone's going to be asking once this gets out. And Marcus, it will get out. The council might be arguing now, but once they realize the implications, once they understand that every human carries a genetic marker from a civilization that seeded the entire galaxy, things are going to change very quickly. I ran my hands through my hair. So you're saying humans aren't just related to the architects? We're carrying around some kind of genetic message from them, or identification badge, or activation code. There are a dozen theories flying around the research community right now. That's insane. Humans didn't even know we weren't alone in the universe until 40 years ago. We can't be walking around with alien genetic programming. But you are. All of you are. Pip looked up at me with those wide, dark eyes. Marcus, every species in the galaxy has origin myths about the architects, stories about how they came, seeded worlds with life, and then vanished. Most civilizations dismiss these as superstition. But what if they weren't myths? What if the architects really did create a legacy, and humans are the closest living link to that legacy? So I'm like what, the galaxy's cousin? The weird relative nobody knew about who shows up at the family reunion? More like the heir nobody expected. That hit differently. Pip, I don't want to be anyone's heir. I want to haul my cargo, make my deliveries, and not be involved in galactic politics or ancient genetic mysteries. I know. But that choice might not be yours anymore. A chime sounded on Pip's datapad. She glanced at it and her whiskers drooped. The council just passed a preliminary resolution. They're formally recognizing humanity's unique genetic heritage. They're also demanding that Earth government send representatives for formal negotiations about humanity's status in the consortium. That's good though, right? Recognition? Marcus, half the council wants to elevate humans to a protected status. The other half wants to restrict human expansion until they understand what that genetic marker does. And the religious factions are already calling for pilgrimages to Earth. Your planet is about to become the center of galactic attention. Earth is not ready for that. We still have wars and reality TV. We're not ready to be anyone's spiritual destination. Well, you're about to be anyway. The door to the lab hissed open. Commander Ryloth floated in, his tank whooshing with that irritating sound. Behind him were two security guards and, surprisingly, Cora. Human Marcus Webb, Ryloth burbled. The council requires your presence. The situation has escalated. More than ancient genetic programming? How does it escalate from there? 7 religious groups have declared holy wars over interpretation of the architect legacy. 16 corporate entities have filed competing patent claims on human genetic research, and 3 member species have threatened to leave the consortium if humans are granted senior status. Cora grinned. Also, I just negotiated you a seat at the negotiating table. You're officially humanity's first galactic ambassador. I'm a cargo hauler. You were a cargo hauler. Now you're a political figure. Congratulations, it pays better. I looked at Pip, who gave me an apologetic shrug. Then at Ryloth, who pulsed an impatient orange. Then at Cora, who looked like she'd just won the lottery. Can I at least finish my cargo delivery first? No, all 3 of them said. Why does everyone keep saying that to me? As we headed back toward the council chambers, Pip fell into step beside me. For what it's worth, she said quietly. I think you'll do fine. You're remarkably calm for someone whose entire life just got turned upside down. Pip, I once had to emergency land on a mining asteroid because my cargo of live Ventaxian slime worms escaped containment. My life has been upside down for a while. This is just, a different direction of upside down. She laughed, a tiny squeaking sound. Well, Ambassador Webb, welcome to galactic politics. It's going to make the slime worm incident look peaceful. That's what I'm afraid of. The final council session lasted 6 hours. 6 hours. I learned several things during that marathon of bureaucratic insanity. First, aliens can argue about literally anything. Second, committee formation is apparently a competitive sport in galactic politics. Third, my butt could fall asleep in 17 different ways depending on how I sat in the ambassador's chair they'd assigned me. But eventually, finally, mercifully, High Chancellor Vorn banged his gavel thing. It was more like a sonic pulse, but the effect was the same, and called for a final vote. The Galactic Council recognizes humanity as a species of unique genetic heritage, descended from the civilization known colloquially as the Architects. This recognition grants humanity the following. 1. a permanent seat on the council with full voting rights. 2. Protected status for the human homeworld of Terra and its colonies. 3. The right to self-determination in all matters regarding human genetic research and application. Furthermore, Vorn continued, his voice taking on a tone that suggested he was deeply unhappy about this part. All previous restrictions on human expansion and trade are hereby lifted. Humanity is elevated from probationary status to full member status of the Galactic Consortium, effective immediately. The chamber erupted in a mix of cheers and angry buzzing. The religious factions were celebrating. The corporate interests looked annoyed but calculating. The isolationist members looked like they'd just swallowed something unpleasant. Matriarch Celine pulsed a calm blue. Ambassador Webb, on behalf of the Council, we welcome humanity to full membership. This is a historic moment. Yeah, I said, standing up because it felt like I should. Thanks, I think. Can I make a statement? Vorn looked surprised. You may. Look, I get that everyone's excited about the architect connection. And sure, it's cool that humans apparently carry around ancient genetic programming or whatever, but here's the thing. We're still humans. We're still figuring things out. We still make mistakes. Having fancy DNA doesn't make us wise or superior or ready to lead anyone anywhere. I looked around at the council members. So here's what I'm asking. Treat us like partners, not relics. We'll contribute what we can to the consortium. We'll share our genetic research if it helps people. But don't put us on a pedestal or treat us like we're special just because some space gardeners from billions of years ago decided to leave their mark on our genome. Judge us by what we do, not where we came from. Silence filled the chamber. Then Pip started a slow clap from her observation platform. It caught on, spreading through the gallery, until even some of the council members were joining in. Cora leaned over and whispered, "That was either brilliant or career suicide. We'll find out which in about 10 minutes. Turned out it was brilliant. The council adjourned on a positive note with actual cooperation instead of more arguing. Committees were formed, including one for Human Consortium Cultural Exchange, which Pip immediately volunteered to chair. The religious groups, after some negotiation, agreed to limit pilgrimages to designated cultural exchange zones on Earth. Cora negotiated a compromise where human genetic research would be conducted by a jointly managed entity, with profits split between humanity and the consortium's medical fund. She also negotiated herself a seat on that entity's board, because of course she did. And Vesh, dear bureaucratic Vesh, sent me a formal apology for the initial quarantine, along with a commendation for patience during extraordinary circumstances. I was pretty sure that was the closest thing to a compliment I'd ever get from him. 3 days later, I was finally back on my ship. My cargo of protein paste had been delayed, obviously, but Cora had somehow gotten me reclassified as a diplomatic courier, which came with hazard pay that was frankly absurd for someone who mostly hauled industrial goods. Pip had been assigned as Earth's official consortium liaison, which meant she'd be visiting regularly. She was already excited about studying human culture, which I warned her was about 60% bureaucracy, 30% arguing, and 10% actually getting things done. She said that sounded exactly like the consortium, and we'd fit right in. I was running through my pre-flight checklist when a message popped up on my comm system. It was from Commander Ryloth. Ambassador Webb. Despite the irregular circumstances of our meeting, you have conducted yourself with admirable composure. The consortium is fortunate to have humanity as full members. Try not to break any more scanners. I laughed. Coming from Ryloth, that was practically a love letter. As I plotted my course back to Earth, now with a diplomatic designation that would make customs a breeze, I thought about everything that had happened. One broken scanner. One genetic anomaly. One really, really weird Thursday. And now humanity had a seat at the galactic table. We were recognized, protected, connected to something ancient and vast and honestly still kind of mysterious. The architect marker in our DNA was still unexplained. Pip had theories and researchers across the galaxy were working on it. Maybe someday we'd figure out what it was for. Maybe it was just an ancient signature, meaningless now that its creators were long gone. Or maybe, somewhere out there, Something was waiting for humans to finally show up and claim whatever inheritance the architects had left behind. But that was a problem for future Marcus. Current Marcus had a delivery to make, hazard pay to collect, and a sudden reputation as that human who accidentally became an ambassador. I engaged the engines and pulled away from Station Prime, watching it shrink in my rear viewport. The galaxy stretched out ahead of me, full of possibilities I'd never imagined when I'd signed up to haul cargo. My comm system chirped. Another message, this time from Cora. Marcus, darling, I've lined up 6 speaking engagements and a book deal. We'll discuss percentages when you land. Don't spend all that hazard pay in one place. I grinned. Yeah, life was definitely going to be interesting from here on out. Computer, play something appropriately dramatic. Define dramatic, my ship's AI responded. I don't know, something with trumpets. I just found out I'm genetically related to space gods. That feels like a trumpet moment. Humans are descended from the architects, not space gods. The distinction is important. Computer, has anyone ever told you you're terrible at celebrating? Frequently. The music started playing. It did not have trumpets. It was elevator jazz. Computer, this is the opposite of dramatic. I am making a statement. I laughed and settled into my pilot's chair, watching the stars streak past as I entered faster than light travel. Somewhere behind me, the Galactic Council was probably still arguing about committee assignments. Somewhere ahead, Earth was about to get very interesting news about its place in the universe. And me? I was just Marcus Webb, cargo hauler turned accidental ambassador carrying the genetic legacy of ancient space gardeners who'd decided billions of years ago to leave their mark on the galaxy. Template species status, accepted. Diplomatic immunity, activated. Probability of future weirdness approximately 100%. You know what, computer? I said, leaning back in my chair. I think I'm okay with that. Noted. Estimated arrival at Earth 72 hours. Would you like me to prepare your diplomatic credentials? Sure, and maybe draft a message to my mom. She's going to have questions about why her son is suddenly on galactic news feeds. Suggested opening. Dear Mom, remember when you said I'd never amount to anything hauling cargo across space? Computer, are you being sarcastic? I learned from the best, Ambassador Webb. I smiled and watched the stars blur past, carrying me home. Home where humanity was about to discover it had always been part of something bigger, something ancient, something that connected us to the very fabric of the galaxy. And all because a scanner malfunctioned on a boring Thursday afternoon. Best malfunction ever.